Yes, okay. Well, in the meantime, in the United States, what's going on with national security?
Well, this is the drama of the week, and this ties into a lot of interesting stories. So let's just look at the latest here. Mike Waltz, Donald Trump's national security advisor, was basically fired last night. And so he's been shuffled in the great UK tradition of cabinet reshuffling. He will now be the UN ambassador for the United States because Trump's other pick had to go back to her congressional seat because they're afraid they were going to lose it to a Democrat. So Elise Stefanik, an arch Zionist, absolutely chosen by Miriam Adelson for that UN ambassadorial position. So they had to find someone who's equally as rabid Israel supporter, and Mike Waltz, of course, fits the bill. So he shifts into there. Why was he fired? He's basically taking the brunt for the Signalgate scandal,
Right.
for starters. But I think there's a lot more. There's probably a few deeper aspects to this, which we won't find out now. He's been replaced by Marco Rubio. So Marco Rubio is now simultaneously the Secretary of State and Donald Trump's chief national security advisor. Not that Mike Waltz was doing anything anyway. So I don't know how important that job is in the Trump administration when you really drill down to it. The next appointee will be Donald Trump's sixth national security advisor, following Michael Flynn, H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, Robert O'Brien, and Mike Waltz. So Donald Trump's been through quite a few of them. So it's a job with a high attrition rate. Let's just put it that way. But why is this interesting? Here's where it gets really interesting. What else is going on in the world? A lot's going on in the world right now. So here's Lindsey Graham. So imagine, we'll talk about the negotiations, but him and other Republicans are front running this new backbone crushing sanctions program. And Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana is saying he's going to turn Russian economy into fish food, whatever that means. But anyway, here's Lindsey Graham. And obviously there's a lot of questions. I mean, not around Lindsey Graham, of course, but around this type of policy here. Why on earth is Donald Trump sending envoys to Moscow, and then Republicans are putting these types of maximum pressure policies to force down? It doesn't make any sense, but neither does this. Trump says any country that buys oil with Iran will not be allowed to do any business with the U.S. Again, high-level negotiations, trying to get a peace deal. So let's look at this. So Trump is, who knows what's going on here? And this has to be from the White House. So Steve Witkoff is the special envoy, getting a lot of headlines. What sort of negotiations is he doing with the Iranians and also in Moscow? There he is with Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, the U.S. government is attacking both of those countries with more sanctions and more threats. And we'll single out Iran because we'll get to that in a moment with Pete Hegseth, the embattled defense secretary in the United States. So what exactly is going on here? It's really difficult to tell. It is really difficult to tell. So meanwhile, to make matters even worse on the Russian front, as you know, this is the 80th anniversary of Victory Day for World War II. It's 1945 to 2025. The 80th anniversary. This is a big deal in Russia. Okay, this is probably on the national holiday calendar after Christmas and Easter. It's probably number 3. Okay, in Russia. So you can imagine, why on earth then does Donald Trump tweet this last night? Let's look at this. Donald Trump on X. Here he is. Who knows? Many of our allies and friends are celebrating May 8th as Victory Day, but we did more than any other country by far in producing a victorious result on World War II. I am hereby renaming May 8th as Victory Day for World War II, and November 11th is Victory Day for World War I, says Donald Trump. We won. He said, we won. The United States, we won both wars. I'm sorry, it's almost a slip. He should have said, I won both wars. But anyway, we won both wars, says Trump. Nobody was even close in terms of strength, bravery, and military brilliance, but we never celebrate anything. He's saying we don't get the credit, he says. That's because we don't have any leaders anymore, not leaders like me, says Trump. And that, so what is he saying? Anymore that know how to do so. We are going to start celebrating our victories again. I mean, is this the United States or is this North Korea? It's really hard to tell. There's so much performative politics here. But we could do a whole show on and relitigate history for Donald Trump for his benefit. But I'll just put one or two useful statistics up on screen here, and here's one of them. We'll bring this up on screen. This is the fraction of a country's population that died in World War II. Who's at the top of the list? It's Belarus, okay? Huge percentage of their population. I think 25%, 1 out of 4 Belarusians died at the hands of the Nazis in World War II. Then Poland, then Ukraine, then the USSR, then Latvia, Lithuania, and so forth. And look at the bottom. Who's right down there at the bottom? It's the United States, right at the bottom. So in terms of human sacrifice at the altar of victory in World War II and the price incurred by countries, the United States isn't even in the running in that sense. If you want a visual map of this, obviously there's a lot of different sources for this, but in terms of total losses, troops and civilians, the Russian losses are estimated between 25 and 27 million. That's compared to the 400,000 plus from the United States, who arguably entered the war very late indeed. And so here, this is open source aggregate data, which is available on Wikipedia. And again, you can see the totals there. Soviet Union's right up at the top, Poland and so forth, Yugoslavia and France and so forth. The United States isn't really one of the top countries. They're not even really in comparison to the Soviet Union. So, and another history lesson, we talk a lot about, D-Day and Normandy. You have to remind people that by the time the Americans arrived on the beaches in Normandy, the Russians were already in Germany and on their way to Berlin in 1944. But arguably, it was the Eastern Front that broke the back of the Wehrmacht. We're talking about the Battle of Stalingrad, the Battle of Kursk, and of course, the big one, Operation Bagration, June 22nd, just three weeks after the commencement of Operation Overlord, or the D-Day landings. This was one of the biggest military operations ever in the history of warfare. And arguably, if you look at what was in play here, there's nothing even close in World War II. So again, having to litigate this history lesson with a U.S. president that looks like he is completely delusional, and I'm being very kind there, and doing it at a time when you're negotiating while Russia's preparing for Victory Day, I can't imagine a bigger implicit insult to the Russians than what Donald Trump is attempting to do there.
So do you think this Lindsey Graham and whatnot heading over to Russia, this is something that's happening absolutely independent of Trump? It's a Republican effort and he has no say in it, or does he even have any knowledge of their plans to do this? Or are they directly attempting to undermine his efforts, or is there some kind of U.S. good cop, bad cop thing going on here?
There could be a good cop, bad cop, but definitely Trump's team is split on the issue of Ukraine. They're definitely split on Iran. It appears that way anyway. So the Republican Party is not in lockstep with Donald Trump, even though he has the commanding heights of the GOP. So there are some differences in interest, and certainly people like Lindsey Graham and who he represents, they want to see the war go as long as possible. And so Donald Trump is really a sort of obstacle to what they want, which is, these Americans are so crass, they're quite happy to watch Europe tear itself to pieces and then just waltz in at the last moment and provide lots of money for reconstruction and, take credit for winning. I mean, we've already made our case here. So, and again, I'll say this very briefly, Mike, because this is an important point. This is the danger with the United States backing out of NATO. While NATO is a malignant force in its expansionist ways, okay, but it works when there's a pragmatic, responsible, compassionate U.S. leader in power. But with Biden and it became completely, malignant. But if Trump pulls out of NATO, then there's a power vacuum. Who's going to fill that power vacuum? Britain or Estonia or radical elements of Germany? And then the U.S. could get pulled back into Europe because a European party did what they've done. What they normally do is petty tribal and ethnic rivalries in Europe or economic subterfuge by certain countries pulls the United States back into a bigger war in Europe. Could that happen? It has happened in history. Okay, so do we want to see that happen again? Absolutely not. This is why we're raising the alarm right now. So it's a paradox, Mike. It's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Let's